Welcome to Bad Law, Worse Facts. I'm your host, Michael Takla. Here today, I got on Sean Claggett. Sean, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you?
Good, man. So I met you at TOU. I've definitely heard about jury ball. I've definitely heard about this whole big data thing. And as a nerd, I was super interested going into this and going into TOU and listening to you. But I didn't know very much about you before that, right? And so when you started talking about, your $480 million verdict and how you asked for $1 billion, I thought this guy must be crazy. But then you broke it down. You showed how you did that, how you came down to the ask, how you trusted the science, and your demeanor. You and I were talking off air. I think you're a super humble guy, but your demeanor is very much like, I trust the science. It doesn't matter what my confidence level is, what it is. I just trust the science. That's how it works. Now you're out of Vegas, and you know, tell me a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, so I started out. I started my own firm 14 months after I graduated law school, and for the first seven, so I started my own firm in January of '05. It's been 20 years, and for the first 7 years, I didn't really do personal injury too much. I just kind of did whatever. If you had $500, I was gonna. So I did family law, bankruptcy, criminal defense. If a personal injury case came in the door, I would do it. Didn't know what I was doing at all. Had no idea. And then in 2010-ish, I want to say 2010 or so, I went to a presentation by Dorothy Clay Sims, and she was like, there was two books I had to read. One was Rules of the Road, and one was David Ball and Dom Keenan's Reptile.
Of course.
And so read those books. I'm like, okay, this personal injury thing seems to be like ideal, especially if you remember back in 2010, the economy had collapsed and it was really bad and nobody could pay any lawyer money. And
Right.
so really, really hard. That economy almost drove us into bankruptcy. I almost lost everything. I was way more broke than the guy begging for money on the corner because I had a lot of debt to go along with my brokenness. So, uh, I basically got a case settled for 1.25 million in April of 2012, and that was the fee that got me on my feet. And it was kind of cool because it was a dear friend of mine, and it worked out. And 2 weeks later, I had a case that the Supreme Court came back in my favor. Got another 1.25, and then 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, I settled a case for like 800,000. So I went from being completely broke to having like $1 million in the bank. And I was like, I'm rich. And
Little
so,
rags to riches in 3 weeks.
yeah, it was about 5 weeks. Yeah, it was super intense and the emotions were tough. But along the way, I had really been decided I was going to learn to be the best lawyer I could be. This is kind of what I do want to talk about. Back then, I knew what I wanted to be. And the what was I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to be able to walk into a room and be respected because I saw how the trial lawyers and all these big trial lawyers at all the conferences I went to, the ones that everybody respected, right? So everybody was drawn to, everybody wanted to talk. And that's what I wanted to be. Problem is I didn't know why. I didn't know the why. And if you don't know the why in your life, I think, in fact, I believe that you can get lost along the way. Kind of what we're talking about is the young lawyers who want to do more trials, but feel like they don't have the opportunity, or maybe they're scared. You need to know your why. Why are you doing this? And today I can sit here and confidently tell you that I have a why. And the why I have is to ensure that I never cheat a person out of their case. And that's my why I do it. And then the what becomes, I will fight every single day these insurance companies and these big corporations who are trying to screw my client, because my why is I'm a protector. I want to protect them. And so as you start to understand your why, the what you're doing will take you closer to your why. Now, if your why is, I want to be rich, well, then you're going to do things to draw you closer to that why. And it may not be very good law. In fact, we see that every single day. We see really, really, really bad things happening to hurt people by plaintiff lawyers every day, because why that's driving them is money. It's not a higher purpose of making sure that this doesn't happen to the next person and that this family is taken care of. And so I started to really understand my why years ago. And that's when I felt like I started to elevate my practice even more, because people ask me, well, what do you do to prepare? Well, the more important thing is, why do I do that? Why do I do what I do to prepare? And because my why is to, I call it keep the wolves away, right? You ever heard that song, Keep the Wolves Away by Uncle Lucius?
Yo, how's it go?
It's a story. It's a story of a kid whose dad was injured in a oil rig explosion in the Gulf and gets really hurt. And there's a lawsuit and there's a settlement and they pay him money. But then that money runs out and the wolves are coming. The wolves are the bill collectors. And so this kid now is singing his heart out so that he can keep the wolves away from his dad and his mom. And that's why I call it Keep the Wolves Away, because I don't think I could ever say it any better than that. Song itself says it, about what a great responsibility we have to do the right thing for our clients. Now, the right thing doesn't always mean going to trial. Remember when as a younger trial lawyer, I knew what I wanted to be? I would take cases to trial that probably shouldn't go to trial. And I got some good results on them and got a little lucky probably. Because if what I wanted to be was a trial lawyer, but I didn't know the why, well then, there's a saying that goes, verdicts feed egos and settlements feed families. Well, if all you know is the what, you'll start doing things for the wrong reason because you're not being driven to a purpose. And so I think as a young lawyer, you really need to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's my why? And when you can understand your why, then what you're going to do to drive yourself to that why becomes a lot easier to do. Even if it's a lot more work, because what we do and the results we get, they don't happen by chance. And it requires a lot of preparation and a lot of work. But because I understand my why and I'm driven by my why, not my what, then I'm driving myself to the best result for my client. And sometimes the best result is to settle. Sometimes it is. But because I put in all the work by doing what we talk about in Jury Ball, the book that John and Alicia Campbell and I wrote, that helps us guide ourselves and our client to a result that is just. And so that's kind of, I think the evolution of my career as a trial lawyer. As a young lawyer, I had the chip on my shoulder. I think we all do. I mean, Mike, you're sitting there right now. I promise you have a chip on your shoulder. You want to get more verdicts. You want to have more.
So bad. Yeah.
Right. You crave it.
Yeah. You want your name out there constantly, right? You just want people.
Why do you want it out?
So, if we're really going to talk about it, get real, I rarely get real personally on the podcast. I try to get it with the host, but I'll tell you, I really started loving my practice when I stopped thinking about the money of it and started thinking about the accountability. And so it is for me, how do I hold someone accountable? And that is where you start getting past the generic discovery of, we're going to send some logs, do this, and we're going to try to get the valuation of the case. And you go to, I need to scorch earth find every single thing about this case possible and understand my client's injuries in their day-to-day possible to fully account for what has occurred. And I just changed my mindset. It really did. And so you're right. So, originally going out of it, the why was obviously money at the beginning for me, because, well, I had student loans.
Look, my why was money too, right? It's why we have a job, right? Why I need to provide for my family, I need to provide for myself. There's nothing wrong with this, by the way. I'm not saying that your why, but the problem is if that why stays money, then you'll never have enough is the problem. You know, I talked a lot about this during the Claggett and Sykes Trial College at TLU, that we need to focus less on the monetary riches that are talked about all too often with lawyers. I mean, for whatever reason, I don't know how it is in Texas, but certainly out in Las Vegas and California, it's a bit obnoxious, candidly, to see everybody driving around in Rolls Royces and Ferraris, this, that, wearing $100,000 watches. I mean,
Sure.
that's not success. I mean, and like I say to people, I'm like, the reality is when you walk away, most of your colleagues are calling you a douchebag because of how you flaunt your money, because it's not how normal, like none of your clients can relate to that, but some people for whatever reason have that insecurity where they need more and they not just to need that to have more, but then to flash it, to make it, something that is like it's a value or something.
I mean, I think it's look, I'm a good trial lawyer. Look at my Rolls Royce, right? Or my Ferrari, or look at this. And then some people are like, he's a good trial lawyer. He's got all this stuff. How do I become the obnoxious person? And then it kind of,
it feeds it.
Yeah, it does.
And that's why, I make it a point to just reject that behavior trait and to talk about, how about being fiscally responsible and owning your home and having no credit card debt and being free from the stressors, the financial stressors that this consumption driven society we live in, right? It's just like more and more and more. Well, how much do you need, right? And I'm not saying you can't have nice stuff. I mean, of course, you work hard. If you want nice stuff, that's fine. I think that it's a danger for young lawyers to think that successful trial lawyers all have all that stuff, because the reality is there's a lot of really successful trial lawyers that don't flash it. In fact, there's a great book called The Millionaire Next Door that everybody should read. Everybody should read it. And it talks about the traits of, that book's old now. It's got to be probably pushing 30 years old, 25, 30 years old. So it's probably a little dated. But the point of the book is, how do millionaires behave? What are the traits? And I promise you, none of the traits that are displayed by these trial lawyers walking around with all their fancy shoes and designer suits and all that stuff, that's not a behavior trait that's shared by millionaires. And so, you live a lifestyle like a professional athlete, you spend and spend and spend. Well, the money stops eventually because your skill set diminishes as you age. I've seen lots of trial lawyers who are past their prime and it's almost sad. In fact, it is sad, but they're doing it because they have to keep working a lot of times, or they don't know what else to do. But no, so I wanted to talk about that in addition to what we're going to talk about today, just because I think for the young attorneys, it's just so important to understand, focus on giving yourself financial freedom. And the reason being is then you can make the best decisions for the why and not the what. Because if you are going to miss your mortgage payment, you'll settle a case for a lower value because you need the money today.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right.
That you don't want to be that person.
Sure.
It also allows you, believe it or not, to treat your staff better financially, because you don't need to take all the money out to support a lifestyle. And so as you grow your firm, if you're financially responsible and then you make that a core value of the firm, your partners will display that.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the associates and everybody below. So if you come to my firm, I can walk you up and down the hallways of all my partners who have paid off their homes, who don't have any debt on their cars, who don't have any credit card debt. And it's very important because nobody here is having to make a decision because they need money tomorrow. We can all make the best decisions, as you know, that sometimes your biggest cases take a long, 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 long time, but you can't settle it short. If they're not offering the right number, then you have to go take the verdict. I would prefer to never have to try a case again. If every single case they'd offer a fair value, well, then we don't have to try the case. But if you're not going to offer a fair value, then guess what? We're going to go try the case. And I'm going to try it every single time. You're never going to get me. That's where you want to get as a lawyer, I think, is that the defense knows you will, if they pay me the right number, I'll settle. But they know that I know the right number because I have the data. And so case after case after case, we're settling for the correct value. This is crazy. My partner just sent this to me yesterday. In the last 12 years, almost 12 years, in the last 12 years, we've settled or obtained verdicts over $1 million 148 times, so that's about one a month for 12 straight years. And a lot of those are 8 and 9 figure, they're larger. But what's happened is that we just say, we have the data. We know what the value is. You'll either pay it to us or we'll take it from you. There's no option. There is no option. And I'm really, honestly, it's such a fun way to work. And it allows you to make decisions that you're not guessing anymore, right? It's so nice not to guess, or not to go to like a bunch of old attorneys who never got the values that you're getting and be like, hey, what do you think this case is worth? And they tell you it's worth 2 million, but the reality it's worth 14. And they take 2 and give each other high fives, but the value's 14.
It's so a few things there. So first, I do want to go back, and when you, as an attorney, I know you went out at like 14 months on your own, but a lot of people will work for someone. And I tell this to everybody who asks me for advice. And I've got a lot of mentees that take the job that's going to teach you how to be a lawyer over the job that's going to give you a ton of money. And so, for example, personally, in 7 years of practice, I can own my own firm. I feel relatively comfortable trying a case. I feel very comfortable with depositions, and I work on my technique every single day. But some of my friends made a lot of money coming out of law school and have never taken a deposition in their life, don't know really how to do it. You've got to spend the time to do that, right? And so you're right. When your why changes, it will change everything, because I don't think I would have been in this position if I just kept saying money, right? The second is, when you talk about, again, that's like that comfortability that you have. Like, you had it at TOU when you described this, and it's just innate in you. Once you started trusting kind of your own size and the data showing it, you feel more comfortable about, look, this is what it says, so we're just going to take it. So, let's kind of dive a little bit into that. What got you to start doing that, and how are you, using it in your practice today?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I started doing focus groups about 14 years ago, and just became fascinated by focus groups. And I was doing repeat focus groups on my larger cases, and I was doing enough of them where I asked my older brother, who's really smart, like engineer type, and understood like how to make programs and stuff, with some friends. And so I said, hey, can you make me a software that will collect the data from my focus groups so that I can pick up patterns? So I'm a big, I don't know, I've always been big into math. And I think when you see patterns, it's not a coincidence, right? Patterns are there for a reason. The problem is sometimes you don't remember, you can't see them unless you collect all that data. But what are the patterns that you're seeing? And so I believed that with enough focus groups, I could actually know what was going to happen in a trial. Of course, everybody always told me, well, focus groups are great for learning issues and spotting issues, but you'll never learn win rate. You'll never learn value. That's what we grew up having people tell us that to be the truth. And so I just have a weird thing about me that I'm like, why? I mean, if they're so good for spotting issues, why can't they be good for determining value? Well, the answer was, as it turned out, you didn't have enough data points. For example, if I were to have a focus group of 10 people and 8 of them love my case, that could be the equivalent of taking a quarter and calling, is it going to be heads or tails, and flipping it and getting heads 8 times. Does that mean that it's an 80% likelihood that it's going to be heads every single time? No, we know that's not true. If we were to flip that same quarter 250 times, we're going to get pretty close to 50% because that's the statistical actual truth. That's the odds. Maybe it's 51.2, maybe it's 49.7. It's going to be around 50. And so because I innately knew that, and my older brother at the time that I was doing this had a very large online retail company, and it was all data. Everything was data. Every single thing he did was driven by data, everything. And so I just kind of looked at it. I'm like, I think this makes sense. And then there was a company that was doing it, and I was doing big data, and I was fascinated by it. And the problem, though, is as we went in and we were using them, multiple cases in a row, the data that they were sending back to us was wrong. And we found mistakes. Their data people that were inputting the data into our information they were making critical mistakes in the way that they were inputting the data back. And so we went into the raw data and figured that out. Do this anymore because it's wrong.
They sent the wrong stuff to the wrong guy, huh?
Well, they were just, I would get into the details. It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
Other than to know that you got to make sure that whatever data company you're using, because there's going to be more and more of these, actually knows what the hell they're doing. So I end up meeting up with John Campbell, and I was an adjunct professor at UNLV, Boyd School of Law, and John was a full professor at the University of Denver. Well, I had read some of his work and was interested, and so reached out to him, and John and I quickly became geeky friends over predictive analytics through focus grouping. And John and his wife, Alicia, had really kind of advanced what this other company was doing and were getting accurate results. And I said, all right, well, let me start using this. And so we got involved with them. It's been quite a while. I mean, it was pre-COVID, so probably 6 years ago, maybe a little more. But so we have been using John and Alicia for a long time, and just it's a phenomenal resource. So what we're doing is we're putting on the plaintiff case, we're putting on the defense case, and we're showing that to a group of people. Now, what is big data, right? Like, why does we believe, and why can we show you with enough information now and results that we can accurately predict the outcome of cases? It's because we do what's called an A and a B study. All facts are exactly the same, but I only change one thing, being the amount of money I'm going to ask the jury for, or tell the jury the case is worth. I corrected that because my dear friend Nick Rowley was like, we don't ask the jury, we tell the jury. We don't ask for money, we tell them. And so I want to correct myself. We change the amount that we tell the jury the case is worth. That is the only thing we change. Everything else is exactly the same. And then what we do is we run that study, say, by 125 people in 3 different groups. We have 3 different numbers we're telling the jury the case is worth, and there you have it. And then all of a sudden comes win rates and values. And the thing that, Mike, that would blow you away is time and time again, the amount of money you tell the jury the case is worth greatly dictates whether the win rate, how likely it is you're actually going to win the case, and millions of dollars in difference in value. Crazy. So you put on the same exact case. It's exactly the same case. You just change one thing, totally different value.
You know, it's one of the first things I learned at law school is don't ask for too much money. The problem with that statement of don't ask for too much money is when you're shooting at the hip, what is too much money? Right?
Well, here's something else that's crazy, is that we've actually found that by not telling the jury the case is worth enough, it can hurt your win rate. You actually have a lower win rate by telling the jury the case is worth less than
Because they don't
telling.
believe you anymore. Because it sounds like you don't believe in yourself.
Well, it's worse than that. It's actually worse than that because they think that you know something that you haven't told them.
Yeah, it's way
Way,
worse.
way worse.
It's
They
way
think
worse.
they think you're hiding stuff from them because how could you tell them the case is worth 10 million when in their minds they believe it's worth 30? It's crazy. But that's why you have to test your case. And if you know your why am I doing this? I'm doing this to ensure full and complete justice to my client, to keep those wolves away. When you believe that's your why and you're driven by that, then you're not going to take the shortcut of not doing this. It is I get very frustrated with people who I've worked with in the past who've seen how this works. In the next case, they don't do it because it was just too much work. Well, you're not driven by the why of keeping the wolves away for your clients. You're not, what you're driven by is probably the what, or maybe you're driven by the why is money. And I don't want to invest the time or the money. I'm just going to shortchange this client. But then be honest with yourself and know who you are. Don't lie to yourself anymore about it. Like that, if that's who you are, it's okay. But I'll never understand it. I watch attorneys do this, and I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand why. How could you cheat your client out of the effort that is available? This is available for you to use, and you choose not to use it.
I think some of it has to do with, you know, the work that's involved, and obviously, and then the other is from what I understand, you've got to be like, I'm going to use Nick Rowley's, brutally honest about your case and providing what the defenses are. And sometimes that can really mentally mess with you when you've got a few $100,000 on the line or more, right?
Well,
And
would you rather have a big data focus group tell you got problems or the jury tell you that your case had?
you're
Past
on,
tense, it's over. There's not a worse feeling out there than losing a trial. That is professional in what we do.
sure.
I'm not personally. There's lots of worse, you know.
You know,
Why are we trying cases we're going to lose? We should be trying the cases we're going to win.
well, cases that you're going to win are going to settle, most likely, right?
Well,
That's probably
except for
why.
you're not settling them you're not keeping the wolves away with those settlements.
You're right. You're 100% right.
I mean, people are asking me all the time, why do you get so many 8-figure settlements? I'm like, because if they don't pay it to me, I just go to trial. And then I think my last like 8 or 9 trials have been 8 or 9 figures, and it's like, well, yeah, because they wouldn't pay me the value. So I just went and took it. Every single time I go and take it, and that's just I'm driven by the data. I listen to the data. I trust the data. I know the data is right. And I tell everybody, until you can prove that my data is wrong, I'm not taking your number. I'm going to go to trial.
You ever had a counsel just say, "Hey, man, what is the median number? I'll pay you that."
Yeah.
That's happened?
Yeah.
So they're really starting to coming around and accepting that your methodology is pretty good.
Why it's even worse for them than that is once the jury goes to deliberate, I show the data to the judge and the opposing counsel. I show them the numbers. Like, here's what the jury's going to do. Here's what the jury's going to do. And they're like, well, we'll see. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. I could be wrong. Look at that. My last trial I just did a couple months ago, data said 24.8 with 57% comparative on one of the defendants we settled with. The actual verdict came back at 28.65 or 26 or whatever it was. It was $150,000 difference and 60% comparative. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I pretty much told you all what exactly was going to happen with this trial. Exactly. You don't have to believe me. I don't care. I mean, in my business, it's always nice to have verdicts, right? It's good for what I do. I don't market, so lawyers are my clients. So it's nice to go get verdicts.
Yeah, because then the scuttlebutt afterwards is definitely worth it. But how did you? Obviously, when people talk about you, they really bring up the huge verdict that you got. And I really don't want to get to the facts of it. I mean, to the listeners, it's pretty simple. I mean, it was a very violent set of facts, but asking for $1 billion on any case, you know, without knowing about big data, without knowing about what you do, seems absurd. How do you go in there and say, you know what, the numbers say that, I'm good?
Yeah, well, that particular case was a case in the poorest county in New Mexico, which it happens to be the poorest county in America. It's real poor, real. To give you an example of how poor it is there, the town we were trying the case in did not have a gas station, didn't have a hotel, didn't have a restaurant, and every single building, save and except for the courthouse, the county building, and a church, had fallen down and was dilapidated. Hey. By the way, during trial, we lost power, we lost water. I mean, this is all just stuff that's going on during the trial. I mean, it's poor community. The water in the town that we were staying in was not drinkable because their water filtration of the town didn't. And there was parasites in the water, so you couldn't drink the water. So yeah, when I tell you that, and so the defense in that case thought, well, there's no way they're going to give a big verdict in this poor community. And so we had run big data on this, and the most I could get myself to muster up to tell the jury the case was worth on the first run was $135 million. We had no pushback. None of the focus group participants pushed back, which gave us pause. And we're like, well, we haven't figured out the value of the case because it's more than this. We just don't know how much more than this. So we ran a second study and went up to $500 million. No pushback again. I'm like, holy shit, man, this is like crazy. And so we ran a third study, and this time we went up to 1.1 billion, which is ultimately what we asked the jury for. And that's when we first saw a little push back that, hey, that you're kind of at the end of the road there. But we knew that if we asked for the 1.1 billion, we would on average get 515 million. We try that case 100 times, that's going to be the average result. And we ended up getting 485 million. And so the result didn't surprise us because it was exactly what not exactly, but I mean, within a few percentage points of what the data said it would be.
When you, like before that, did you ever talk to like any other attorney and be like, what do you think the evaluation of this kind of case would be?
No, I didn't care.
Sure.
I could give two flying flips about what another lawyer tells me they think the value of the case is.
Because they're shooting at the hip. Yeah.
That has zero value to me. Like, so what? There's not an attorney in Las Vegas that I could talk to that could tell me what the value of one of my cases should be. They'd all be wrong. Every single time. I mean, we started out by asking for 135 because that was we just couldn't fathom going higher, but we did. To the data.
I feel like at that point, you're like, man, I have severely undervalued my case. What you did at the one.
Well, and think about how often we do that to our clients. We undervalue our cases all the time. I mean, we just had a case without getting into the details. We just had a case that if I were to ask around, well, let me just ask you, I'll ask you, pre-existing neck injury, call it new back injury,
new-ish back injuries. Okay.
New-ish back injury, big impact, big, no question about the impact. Ultimately has also a knee injury, had to have surgery on, I want to say it was like a ligament of some sort, right? Has 2 fusion surgeries, one on his neck, one on his back. What's the value of the case?
I would have to ask so many more questions to find that out. But
well, what would you like to know?
It's a commercial 18-wheeler case?
No, it was a pickup truck that was like a security guard for a hotel. Positive.
Any issues with the driver? Any issues with the company?
We said he fell asleep. They said he didn't fall asleep, but there was no drugs around.
I guess 2 fusions, knee surgery. I don't know. I would say somewhere below 7 figures. If I had to guess, just without knowing anything about the guy.
Yeah, right. That's what most people would probably say. That's an 8-figure case. I'm just saying, because when we tested it, we figured out that that's what people value it at. And so that was a case we didn't even have to try. That case settled in the 8 figures. And so, we have undervalued our cases for a very, very, very long time. Really bad.
It's one thing that I really do like, and the reason why I have you on this podcast is I want, when I talk to at least some attorneys in Houston, they've never heard of this. I want to bring awareness to it, because I think as you continue to trailblaze on with this, it's going to become more and more common practice. But more importantly, when you come to the table on a case, they know that you have analyzed this pretty significantly and can tell the value for the most part. And so when you say a number, you mean that number. And when it comes to other attorneys that have not done this and don't do this, it becomes a situation of, well, what's the real value? What's the real value? That's what we always ask ourselves all the time. And if you're telling me there's a process in which I can determine relatively there is, that's huge. That is huge. It's going to be a name state. It's going to be something that everyone's going to use sooner or later, especially as technology continues and we can make it easier and easier, more readily available to people.
Yeah, I mean, the jury ball process that we use is, now I will say, doing the jury ball data study and then not understanding how to implement it is problematic. I have watched 2 trials in a row that folks used our jury ball data and then went to trial, and you got woefully less than what the data predicted.
Because they kind of went their own instincts. They're like, forget it. I'm going with my own instincts on it.
Yeah, you look at how the case was presented, you're like, you didn't follow the data. You didn't tell the story. There's a story that if you tell it the right way has a value. If you jumble it all up and don't do it the right way, then guess what? Well, I don't even understand it. I'm like, why? And I think a big part of that is people don't know how to implement it. So there is 2 parts to it. And that's what our jury ball book talks about, by the way. Our jury ball book literally talks about, hey, what is big data? How does it work? And then most importantly, how do I implement it into my case? That's what there's literally 3 sections of the book. And we did it that way intentionally because we want people to understand this is what it takes to implement the big data into your trial. And if you do it correctly, the results usually are pretty darn close, within range. I've seen 3, if you can include Jordan Logan, who's my partner, who beat the data, but like significantly beat the data. I've seen it twice, and that can happen. I mean, you can sit a perfect jury, you can get lucky sometimes and get the perfect jury where you tell them what the case is worth. They're like, we're riding with you, buddy. Let's roll it to the promised land. But most of the time, you don't have a perfect jury. You get a good jury, but you get a great jury. It's not a perfect jury. So, yeah, but I mean, the data is definitely, it's not going away. And like you said, the fact that people in Houston don't know about it, I go around and speak. I'm speaking to the Wisconsin trial lawyers. I'm speaking to Connecticut trial lawyers, Michigan, Idaho, and West Virginia in the next few months. And I would venture to guess that 95% of the people in the audience will have never heard of big data. And they will be skeptics. And that's,
of course there will be.
It's okay, but I would just tell everybody, you can be skeptical as long as you want, but the longer you wait, the more money you're leaving on the table. And your job, right, is to keep the wolves away for your clients by ensuring they get the right number for their case. Well, I think it's important to remember that, is that if you're not running the data, you're completely guessing on the value. Completely and utterly guessing at what the value of your case is worth. Is that the type of lawyer you want to be for your client? Or do you want to know what the case is actually worth and then go get it for them? Whether it be through settlement or verdict. I mean, the one nice thing is as a young lawyer without results, I promise you will get your opportunity to try a bunch of cases that you'll get great results on. if you do your case selection properly through the data. So when you go and tell somebody, you run your data, and it's like, oh, it's a $15 million case. Well, we're not giving you that. We'll offer you 7. Should you take it? I mean, it's your client's decision, but obviously the answer would be no based on the data. You wouldn't take that. You go get it. And that's the value. I did the trial. This was post-COVID, so this was in the last few years. This trial, I just remember because I had to wear a mask during the trial, which was awful. But in that case, the client was offered $15 million during trial, and our data said that the case was worth 30-ish. And so I'd gone over the data with the client. I'm like, what do you want to do? 15 million is a lot of money. It's guaranteed. It's now. And she looks at me, she's like, no, if you're telling me the value of my case is this, I've been broke my whole life. I know how to be broke. I can only get justice for my daughter who was killed one time, and it's now. And so we turned down the 15. And then the jury gave us exactly what the data predicted, which was like, I want to think 32 point. So bad at remembering these numbers. You think I would remember them better, but like 32, something, 30, something like that.
I have so many 8-figure verdicts and settlements. I just forget which one's which.
I don't remember the, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them that are similar, so I don't remember exactly.
I'm just giving you.
But yeah, it's all right. But yeah, so that it gives you that ability to say no, right, to a big offer during trial. And there's other times where I've seen people not listen to the data when an offer's made, and they should say yes, and they don't take it, and then they end up on the wrong side of things. The data is there to guide you, not just at the beginning, in the middle, but the end also. It's there to guide you the whole time. I mean, post-verdict, on appeal, mediation. Yeah, it's there to guide you then too.
Really, on appeal? Oh, because you can still run the issues. Huh.
Well,
I never thought of that. I never thought of that way.
You're looking at, you would say you go to trial and you get $40 million.
Yep.
And the data says, hey, your average result at trial is 37. And then on appeal, they've got, there's some issues on appeal. There's always risk on appeal.
Always, yeah.
You've got to now make a decision. Do you take they're offering you 36 million. Now with your prejudgment interest, all that, now you're not 40, you're at 47. But they're basically offering you the value of the case. If you were to lose and have to retry it, they're offering you that value. Well, yeah, I mean, at some point you take the money. You advise your client that, yeah, we should settle. I know it's a little discount off of but it takes all the risk away. And I've seen it happen where a good friend of mine got a great verdict, and on appeal, it was all taken away. And they had offered on appeal like 50 million.
That must have not been a great day.
I would say so. I mean, it worked out.
A little bummer.
It worked out in the end for him, because it wasn't, they didn't take it and not give him another trial. They took it and gave him another trial.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
It still was, worked out okay. He never got back to that number again, but that's a thing that happens, and you want to follow the data. So
let me ask you this: for young attorneys, like I did a focus group. It was not a focus group. It was supposed to be a focus group, but I did one. I was a part of one as a law school student, right? And I thought it was so haphazardly run that when they were trying to deliberate or try to determine anything, it's like, man, if this is like how an actual jury is, I don't know if I want to be a trial lawyer. For young lawyers, how do they start getting involved in understanding focus groups? I remember I heard something, I don't know if you told me, but maybe someone told me that you started doing like focus groups early on in your career, like every Friday situation. Tell me about that.
Well, we just call it Focus Group Friday. I mean, I think as a young lawyer, you should, because Fridays are typically slow.
Sure.
It's just a fact. I mean, a lot of times courts are dark. Depots don't really get set on Fridays a whole lot. Fridays are just the lightest day of the week. Monday through Thursday is pretty chaotic, but Friday, it's just a little lighter, which is why we chose Friday. So the way I did it, I mean, it's pretty simple. I just had at the time, my paralegals. Now, I will tell you, it's a lot of work. Your paralegal may come to despise you. Okay. I'm just saying in all fairness, but my paralegals would go like onto Facebook and Craigslist and recruit people. And we'd just set them up every Friday and just give me 10 people that are confirmed. Now I have a full-time person who does the recruitment. And it's all day, that's what they do. They just are constantly recruiting because we're running now 3 to 5 focus groups a week, right? So we're doing 200 a year.
Jeez. Okay.
Either for ourselves or for other lawyers. So we're very, very, very busy in the focus group. So we need
also a little bigger firm now, huh?
Yeah. I mean, the firm is larger, but I also we have a rule in our firm. Anybody that wants to run a focus group, go run it. No questions. Just go run it. You're going to be a better lawyer by doing it. Now, what I would tell you, there's, in tech, like in your area, there's a bunch of attorneys that do focus groups regularly. I would reach out to them and say, hey, can I watch this? And I will tell you that Andrew Gold wrote a book on focus groups. It's really good. And it's kind of teaches you the 17 different types of focus groups you can run. There's probably more types, but for 99.9% of what we're doing, it covers everything. And it's a wonderful book. And David Ball has a DVD, I believe, that's out that kind of talks about doing your own focus groups. But you should be doing them because I don't care who you are, unless you're Nick Rowley. And Nick is amazing, right? Like Nick and I are the same age. Nick has done over 100 more jury trials.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he loves it. And he's done a lot of them. And these aren't criminal trials. These are civil trials. There's nobody in our generation that's even remotely close to that number. Just, it's not
possible.
Right.
I didn't think it was, at least.
But what the difference now is I haven't done as many trials. I've done way more focus groups. I'm at probably 700-800 focus groups. Now, what Nick has, if you ever get the opportunity to watch him, I mean, you should, everybody, all the young attorneys should go on to CVN.
Yeah.
And Trial Lawyer on Demand, Trial Lawyer University on Demand. Those are the two. It's money you should invest in, because CVN, you get to watch the entire trial of the best lawyers doing what they do. One thing you'll notice, they're kind of human. If you watch my cross-examination, Roger Dodd will tell you it's terrible. I do not follow any rules. I fucking take all kinds of crazy risks, and it's true. I could be way better. But you know what's good about that? Look how successful I've been. Right? I'm not. It allows you to watch the best lawyers and realize that you can do it. But here's the other thing. Trial Lawyer on Demand, Trial Lawyer University on Demand, it's cheap. I mean, I think it's like $1,400 a year. On that, you can watch the lawyers on the CVN do what they're doing, Oz, and tell you what they just did and why they did it. You want to talk about elevating yourself Now, think about doing 3 things. Focus group Friday, commit to watching 4 hours of CVN a week and 4 hours of Trial Lawyer University on Demand a week. Now you're talking about 12 of your 60 hours that you're going to work, right? 1/5 of your time on personal improvement. So 20% of your time is on personal improvement. 80% of your time is working for your clients. I promise you that in 2 to 3 years, you will be a phenomenal trial lawyer. Because by the time you get your chance to go, you have done 100, 150 focus groups. You've learned hundreds of hours of improvement. There's a process to being great. I think those would be 3 of the things that I would implement tomorrow as a young lawyer to be great. And when you watch whether it's Nick Rowley, me, Brian Panish, Mark Lanier, Tom Klein, whoever it is, you'll learn very quickly that we're all human. Now, we may make certain things look pretty easy that you may try to execute and think that's not so easy. I had a young associate in my firm. It's like, oh, these focus groups are easy, man. I see you doing them. There's nothing to them. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, well, you're going to do the next one. He goes, good. I'm going to show you how easy it is. He was terrible, terrible. And I sat there and he's like, you make it look so easy. I'm like, that's called experience, buddy. But we both laughed because he realized that it was not as easy as he had thought. But I would say that get those focus groups under your belt because it's going to make you comfortable in front of the jury. And when you can be comfortable in front of a jury, you can be your authentic self. If you're your authentic self, they're going to trust you. If they trust you, they're going to believe you. If they believe you, they will give you justice.
I could not have said any of that better. I 100% agree with you with putting in the personal development. I really like CVN, and I definitely like the idea of, I don't do that at my firm. Like focus group Fridays, never done that. I mean, again, I've done focus groups, been part of it, but to consistently do it and you're going to feel a lot more comfortable with the case. And there's cases that I get jumped onto last minute to go try or work out, and you don't feel particularly comfortable because you don't feel particularly comfortable with the facts because you haven't rehearsed this, you haven't put it on, you haven't done any of this to see what a jury would even think about it. But to be able to do that and say, yeah, we're going to do that every Friday for a case.
For 4 hours. It's just 4 hours. It's like for your Friday.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. It's going to make
This
you way more
day,
comfortable.
To this day, every single trial I do, I will run 3 to 4 focus groups leading into the week before trial, doing my voir dire and my opening. So by the time I actually go do voir dire and I give the opening, that's the 5th time I've done it. You want to feel comfortable. I mean, I've done 4 dress rehearsals. Now I'm actually performing in front of the crowd.
Yeah, most attorneys do not do quote unquote dress rehearsals. They write it down. They're like, oh, here we go. And that's not a good way to do it.
That gets back to they don't have a why. If you truly have your why, you would never, ever, ever behave that way. You wouldn't behave that way. You only behave that way because you have a what. That's why. That's why that happens. We have a saying in our firm, no lazy lawyers. That lawyer that writes his opening out the night before and wings it is lazy. And why is he lazy? He has no purpose. He has no why. And it's, I feel bad for the clients that have lawyers like that. You know, you need to know your why. And when you know your why, all of that work that goes into putting on the best case becomes a lot easier to do, even if it's a lot of work, because you have a purpose. You're walking to the why. Everything you do is a step forward to the why. And until you can make that why and understand that everything you're doing is for that purpose, the what you are doing is because of the why, you know, that's what we do at our firm. And I think I'm very proud of the lawyers. I'm surrounded by the most talented lawyers on the planet. Both, we have offices in New York, Connecticut, Reno, and Vegas, and all those offices, the talent level is off the chart. And I'm really proud of the attorneys that we have. But, you know, that culture and that behavior starts at the top. And my 2 equity partners, Matt Granda and Will Sykes, buy into it 100%. We all walk the walk. And so everybody wants to follow us, and as they should, right? We're doing it the right way. And the results speak for themselves. I mean, our clients are taken care of, and we're making sure those wolves could never get near. So
look, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I could talk to you all day about this, but I do try to keep it to about an hour for these podcasts. You know, kind of in the closing remarks, I mean, you consult, you do this type of stuff. How do people reach out to you when they want to do some sort of study like this?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out. You can go to my website at claggettlaw.com. You can also call the office. You just go to the website, get the number there. But yeah, I mean, that's the best way. And then, you know, I'm always willing to help. I mean, that's the other thing, is that we have a belief in our firm that if somebody reaches out for help, I mean, just like you're like, I got this podcast, you want to do it? I'm like, yes, you know, we're going to help out. You know, we want to do everything we can to give back. One of the core beliefs I have is that we need to share our knowledge to ensure that more people can have just results. And by trying to hold on to the knowledge is very selfish. And so, so any chance we get to talk about this stuff, I think we have an obligation to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I may have to after this send this podcast to HCLA. You may get a call to come down here and give us a presentation.
Yeah, look, I'd be more than happy to come down and talk to y'all. That sounds like it'd be a good time.
Yeah. Dinner's on me, though. I promise that, at least. But Sean, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Man, it's given me a little bit more thought about what I need to do at my firm, and I think you've really given a good insight to young attorneys. And honestly, I don't even know what the title is going to be of this one. At first I thought, how do you comfortably ask for $1 billion? But honestly, it may just be find your why. I like that more too. So
I think that's a good one. I think that's we need to do a better job of that.
you're right. You're 100% right. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks.